So now it's about November, and I thought it'd be a really good opportunity for you to learn maybe some residents, so those birds that actually stay in your yard, or maybe were here all year round that you didn't notice, and you've probably mostly noticed those birds migrating through and coming into town, but maybe you've forgotten about those that actually call your backyard or your property home year round. So one of the things we're going to do is something called a suet block, or a fat block, essentially what it is. It's basically a way to feed birds through the winter. So you're helping them supplement what, sort of trying to mimic as close to possible some of the natural food sources they would have access to, and you're sort of beefing that up with the fat block and some of the seeds and nuts we're going to include. So your first option, and the easiest one, would be to go to your local bird store, maybe even your neighborhood hardware store carries bird seed and already pre-packaged, pre-made suet blocks, fat blocks. This one is called Almond Munch. They come with different varieties. You can even get insects that will be already embedded in the fat blocks as well. So these are combinations. They'll usually tell you which birds you'll attract by buying this specific type of fat block. So we'll get started with making ours right from scratch, and I'll show you just to get an idea of what we're in for here. This is the block that I already made, just a small one, because you want to have test out your birds and what your backyard habitat is like. And another fun way to display it would be to take a pine cone, so maybe a native one you have already in your yard. These are ponderosa pine cones, and just jam the mixture, which will then solidify in the cone, and you can hang it just with any sort of string or things that you have, maybe even wire if you've got a really creative squirrel. So we'll get started with the actual fat suet block. It comes like this, so I just again bought this at my local bird store. It's just pure fat. We'll just use the store-bought. It's about 10 ounces, so a little more than a cup of fat for our recipe, and we'll start melting that down on the stove just at a low heat so that we can pour it over our grains and nut mixture. So while the fat is melting on the stove, we're going to start to prepare our dry ingredients, and one of the first things you can measure out would be peanut butter. Now with your birds, if you can get the most natural, sort of unrefined products as well, that would be best for everyone involved. It could be organic products, you know, things without pesticides. We don't want to expose them to anything else more than necessary, so we'll measure out. And I've just chosen here crunchy peanut butter so that there'll be lots of good bits of nuts in here. Now if this is a really neat and fun sort of kid project to do, if your kids are allergic to peanut butter, you could substitute in other types of nut butter or other nuts like almonds perhaps, or something else. So we've got our 1 cup of peanut butter measured out. The other thing that we're going to use to sort of make this a nice sticky mixture is a cup of flour. And that can be, again, I'm using a whole wheat flour because that's sort of good for both us and the birds. Using 1 cup of whole wheat flour. Your second choice would be just a regular white flour, and again organic, and we'll just start to stir that in. The next piece is basically, so this is a really simple ratio of 1 cup of the suet, 1 cup of peanut butter, 1 cup of flour, and now you've got 4 cups of grains, oats and seeds. So we'll add a cup of sunflower seeds, and we'll just top that up with some dried currants to make sure we get a cup of ingredients. So now we're up to 2 cups of ingredients, and so we'll just add whole oats, and we'll just mix all of this in as best as you can. So once you've got all that mixed in, your fat that's been slowly melting on the stove is probably ready, and we'll just turn it down. So I just had it really low so that it's not too boiling hot, but you can see it's all liquefied down now. Again, it's not too smelly. You can smell it. It's definitely fat, but you don't have to handle it too much, and it's going to solidify really quickly because we're going to put this in the freezer as soon as we mix it up. And while that's liquefied, we're just going to mix all of it together. You can make them as big or as small as you like, depending on how many birds you have coming to your feeder, and they just store really nicely frozen in the freezer, so you can draw on them whenever you like once you make a batch like this.